and get started. I've got quite a bit of information here that I'm going to breeze through pretty quickly, but feel free during the Q&A session to ask questions about this. But my name's Tyler Mark. I'm an associate professor at the University of Kentucky. Been working on this hemp project since about 2014, so been trying to pull a lot of different pieces together. So we're going to talk a little bit about the economic outlook for hemp. So just from a national perspective, in June, looks like we had about 465,000 licensed acres, about a 9% decrease from 2019. But we had a lot more growers, 27% increase in growers as we had additional states come into production across the U.S. So that's been an interesting piece to watch there. And I normally have a piece on FSA in here and FSA data, but the previous speaker alluded to it a little bit, but FSA acres are understated from what's actually there because a lot of producers may or may not ever fill out that 578 form. Going forward in the new 2018 Farm Bill, once that becomes law, that'll be required to do that. So those FSA acres should catch up in going forward in future growing years. So I'm kind of looking forward to that, to having a better data source for that. On the economic side, most of us are pretty familiar with the big price fall that happened between July 19 and January of 20. It fell from almost 450 per point dollars per percent CBD, all the way down to the point now where we're basically down below $1. And this is where I've been telling a lot of our producers, at least for the past year or so, is that they need to figure out how they're going to make money growing at under $1 a point in this. And this is kind of has all the data in it that I can find from a group called Panex Exchange. There's also another group out there called Hemp Benchmarks that will also put out a price series as well. So, but as you can see, we're under $1 still today. We're starting to see this tick back up just a little bit. If you look at this next slide, in the high side of this is because you're starting to see some of the 2020 crop bleed into it, but we still have a lot of really low pricing in here as well, because we still have a lot of the 19 crop that probably people are still holding on to and are trying to figure out how to get rid of, and are taking some pretty low prices on that. So we'll see how that continues to level out going forward into the rest of 2020 and into 2021. And I'll talk a little bit about what I think the future might look like at the very end. Also put in here some price numbers on some of the refined products. So this is especially on the essential oil side of things. So the crude, full spectrum, broad spectrum, and isolate. As you can see, those prices are continuing their downward trend. It looks like crude's kind of hit the bottom and it's kind of leveled out since about February of 20. But everything else is still continuing downward just a little bit. We may see an uptick in isolate, given the new desire to have Delta 8, which is also a target for DEA's most recent letter that they put out. So there's some interesting pieces in that. I haven't dug into details on that, but that is another regulatory issue that still this industry is trying to deal with. Input costs are still pretty high, especially on the clone side of things. If you look at the CBD clones, they're still up in that $1.75 to $4.50 with an average price of $3.12. We saw a lot of pressure this year come in and people trying to grow for CBG. And we've seen CBG clones are up in that $4.25 to $7.50 range. So that puts a lot of pressure on the budgetary side of this and profitability side, which we'll talk about here in just a second. But these are some things that are starting to work their way out. I saw the other day that some other companies are starting to release some new genetics and new varieties. So hopefully as time goes on, these prices will continue to fall to help increase some of the profitability, since this is one of the major costs in most of the budgets that people are producing for essential oils. So I put in here, I pulled some stuff from a number of different universities just to kind of give you a spectrum or a comparison across states on what they're looking at. This is for the fiber side of things. As you can see, the fiber side of things is you're getting down there to break even, just below break even. And they're in some states, so Pennsylvania and Cornell are projecting some better profits on the fiber side. But you can go look at their budgets and see what they do different versus what we do at the University of Kentucky. But this one, I think, has a lot of potential in the future, but just hasn't got there yet. But now maybe with some of the price slide in the in the essential oil side of things, we'll see more attention being paid to fiber and grain. Grain's a lot of the same story. We do see some really good potential out of Cornell and some of their budgets. I haven't dug deep into their budgets, but these are just the numbers that they have put out. I find it hard to believe that we get up to that level, but you can see some of this, and I think most of it actually, if I remember correctly, had to do with their yields and their pricing point for grain. On the CBD side of things, a lot of us are in kind of the same area, around that 1,000 plus, all the way up to 7,500 for the University of Missouri. I think that's probably a little optimistic, and even the Kentucky numbers probably are a little optimistic now. But this is kind of where we're at in terms of budgets for the 2020 season. I wanted to touch a little bit on the consumer side of things, because I think that has been an interesting area that there's a lot of education that needs to take place on the consumer side. So there are two recent studies that were done, both by New Frontier Data, one done in Europe and one done in the U.S. They're not enormous surveys. They are decent sized surveys, and at least start to point at some of the issues that we have on the consumer side, and consumers understanding what some of their drawbacks are to actually purchasing these products. And if you look at this next set of graphs, a couple things that are going to come out. For the people that are concerned, they're really concerned about the quality, the dosing accuracy, contaminants, taste, legal status, and presence of THC. Those are the big areas that a lot of people are concerned about from the surveys that have been done. And there's been another little survey done in the U.S. It was done in October of 19 that talked about how, without regulatory framework in place, consumers are less likely to purchase CBD products just because they're unsure of what's actually in that product. So I think that's one of the major hurdles, or is a major hurdle that we're going to have to get over in this industry before at least the essential oil side takes off, or gets closer to what the potential we thought it might have. So going forward in 2020 and 2021, I really think that there's been a complete resetting of the market and the market expectations. I think you've seen some of that. A couple of examples that I would say are, we've seen a number of bankruptcies. Some of them have happened in the state of Kentucky as we realized that maybe the market potential isn't there that was, or we had put out contracts that at a price that we couldn't afford to pay. We also had venture capital flowing in, and it flowed back out. So we've had a lot of market changes, and I think we're resetting all those expectations for what is going to be in the market. Another piece of evidence that tells me that this is happening is that I think there were about 700 crop insurance policies written, and that's across the whole U.S., and that's kind of indicative that one of the things you had to get a contract was, or to get crop insurance, you had to have a contract. If you don't have a contract, you can't get crop insurance. So there wasn't very many contracts out there to be had. So you saw very little crop insurance policies being sold. I think we're going to see some improved genetics. We're going to have improved genetics as we continue to go forward, especially given what the interim final rule does and where that lands, at what percent THC that lands at. We are seeing still increased licensed acres and growers. Going forward, we're going to have more and more tribes. We've got 33 tribes, 22 states, 2 territories that all have approved plans now. So we're probably even going to see more production coming forward in 2021. Steep learning curve for a lot of new producers. Those states like Kentucky that are still in the 2014 pilot program, we're going to see changes to our regulations here that is going to precipitate some new things that we're going to have to do in this state. We still have a lot of unclear regulations. There's a new comment period open. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. Minimal contracts available, bankruptcies. We're starting to see some reorganization of assets and some consolidation within the industry. So there's a lot of pieces going on. I know it covered a lot of ground. Feel free to reach out to me at any point in time, and I'm more willing to help with whatever I can. Thank you.